Growth Strategies for Small and Mid-Sized Businesses, your guide to navigating growth, transformation, and success in today's ever-changing business landscape. Each week, we'll dive into proven strategies, real-world case studies, and actionable insights designed to help small and mid-sized business owners scale smart, lead stronger, and grow faster. Let's get you unstuck and on the path to sustainable, scalable success. Now your host, Julio Gonzalez.
Welcome back to From Stuck to Scaled. I'm your host, Julio Gonzalez. We all know change is inevitable, whether it's a merger, acquisition, or a major digital transformation. But here's the reality. Most change initiatives fail, not because the strategy was flawed, but because leaders underestimate the natural human reaction to change. Fear, resistance, even excitement can quickly derail deals, sink ROI, and damage culture. Today's guest, Dr. Rachel Boehm, is here to show us a different path. As an organizational behavior expert and founder of RB Strategies, Dr. Rachel helps leaders transform change from a source of chaos into a true strategic advantage. With decades of experience and her science-backed, people-proven approach, she guides leaders in shifting the way people respond to disruption. So instead of burnout and dysfunction, organizations find clarity, alignment, and success. All right, and let's welcome Dr. Rachel Boehm to the show. Welcome, Dr. Rachel.
Hi, great to see you, Julio.
I am so glad to have you here. I'm very excited for this conversation. Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your business.
Yeah, sure. So, I run a change management firm. My background is in organizational behavior, individual behavior. For the folks that know what IO psychology is, I'm in that bucket. So really my goal is to make work, not suck and kill people, to help to help leaders understand how they're coming across, how, just get a pulse on who is in the room, the personalities in the room, how we all respond under pressure through times of change and crises and, all the things that we're going to get into today. Because at the end of the day, right, our job is to get things done through people. And so you kind of need to know who's in the room.
Absolutely. So many people think, oh, I'm fine with change, and they're not. So many leaders underestimate the level of effort of even small change, which takes a lot of effort in most cases. So this is a very important topic for our listeners. So tell me, how do you new leader, let's start it from a new leader perspective. New leader coming into an organization, that brings a lot of change. How would you facilitate a conversation with that leader about them, being the new person and a new leader and everything that it means for everybody involved?
Yeah. So if they haven't, if they're not the client yet, right, if we're having that kind of earlier call, I might just ask them, like, what would it mean for you to get the buy-in and the trust of the employees quickly? What would it mean if I could predict your reputation with others? And then just see what they say.
And what is their typical response?
Well, I mean, I would hope, but usually people are like, how does that? It sounds like wizardry, But I leverage the Hogan assessments for that and for a lot of work. Not all the work, but for those conversations and those engagements specifically, helping people understand, right, how you think you're coming across isn't always how you are in fact being received, which in and of itself is kind of like for a lot of folks, because we're all the main character in our own story. So we forget that we're not always, again, people aren't always understanding what we're trying to convey.
So you now this person's contracted with you, you've gone through some assessments, how do you help them get through this change of them being the new leader?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is understanding, the first part is laying that foundation of, remember that it's not just you dealing with the change, it's also the employees,
Mhm.
right? So there's change on all sides. Helping them have a little bit of understanding and empathy around the process for what the employees are going through, because that's going to help them make the employees feel seen and heard, right? It's going to
Absolutely.
build that bridge, build that trust. Um, when we look at, so we all change how we behave when we are under stress, and
Mhm.
change is stress,
Yeah, very
right?
much.
So it can be good stress, it can be bad stress, but it's change and it's stress, and we can go into the like whys, around human brains and evolution and why we react the way we do to change. But here we are with the client, right? Is taking them through like these strengths that they have when they are not managing themselves, that pressure well, those can actually become weaknesses. Those can derail them, right? So for example, that diligent person that, it's the person you want for your CFO, your accountant, you know, they become micromanagers.
Yeah.
The person that's like that visionary, like, oh, all the ideas. It's like trying to pin down a cloud and you get so frustrated. You're like, what rabbit am I chasing now? Like, can you just pick an idea? You know? And so on. And so we have these like, let's get a sense of like, what are your strengths? What are you made up of? What are your predispositions? And then how do those shift into overdrive and erode trust, among other things, when you are under pressure, when you are feeling insecure because it's a new position, when you are scared about whether or not you're going to meet what the board is requiring you to do. Um, sometimes there's this, and I have certainly had it, this belief that ugh, the new manager, the new CEO, like whomever it is, right? The new person's just going to parachute in. Here's how I do it, and then leave. Like they're just trying to build a thing, say we did this one major thing, leverage that to build their resume and go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And certainly there are people that is just kind of how they do things. Hopefully not any of my clients. Hopefully I can screen that out, right? But a lot of times it's not, that is not the intention. It may be the outcome or the perception, but it's not the intention. And so if we can take a step back and like, okay, what is the intention here? The intention is, yeah, sure, to do a good job and build that resume, build the credentials, but it's to do a good job, right? It's to transform the organization so that people have a workplace to work in, to help balance performance goals with well-being demands, et cetera, et cetera. Um, to take the business into that next phase of growth. If you are in feeling insecure or nervous or not sure if you're going to make the impact fast enough, it's going to bias you towards decisions and actions that end up shooting you in the foot. Some people respond to those pressures by launching forward.
Mhm.
Some, so moving towards it, others will run away from it, right? So it's like, oh, I don't know. And like they hem haw about it forever, right? And so it helps you kind of create this decision tree, this checklist, be comfortable with people saying like, actually, I don't know, that's a good idea, and you don't feel like it's a threat to your ego.
Right.
You welcome like the non-yes people.
So talk to me a little bit about communication styles and, the impact. I mean, we know, you just talked about perception.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you get that leader to communicate better and communicate more effectively when it is a CFO that's an analytical person, not a warm communicator, and they need to engage people for that effective change?
Yeah, and depending on the lift there, I might bring on one of my, trusted colleagues who do true, like more in-depth communication training. But initially, it's just helping them get comfortable with themselves, right? If you every like, interpersonal relationships begin with intrapersonal awareness.
Yeah.
right? So if you can just remember that not everybody thinks the way you do or speaks the way, like, we don't communicate all in the same way. Um, Everything is really marketing, right? Like the employees need to know what's in it for them. So with my where I kind of touch on communications is it's very like internal communications. It's not external, it's internal, leader to employee, employee to employee, etc. Um, what is what is the problem you're trying to solve? What is the question you're really trying to answer? Like really get to the heart of it. What are you trying to convey? What are you afraid that they're going to think? What rumor are you trying to like, prevent from happening or get, removed from what's being said when you're not in the room. And if we can kind of talk through that, then we can go through um, next steps of like, okay, how are we going to change what's being said or the body language? The biggest piece of my work, besides asking those questions, is around what I call change-based communication. Um, I'm not the only one that's come up with that. Like it's stage-based communication, excuse me. And that pulls from my work with, health and individual behavior change. Prior to this work, the analogy that I use is like pick any health habit that you've been trying to change. We all have one, at least one, right?
At least.
Yeah, at least one, right? Uh, the you deciding to make the effort to make the change didn't happen overnight, right? If we take, like, say, a smoker, for example, right? There are probably people around them like, you gotta quit, you gotta quit, you gotta quit. And they're like, meh, meh, go away, go away. Go. I know, right? Eventually, maybe they're like, okay, I'll fit. Like, how would that work though? Like, oh, there's an opening. Okay, I'll look into it. Okay, all right, we're moving you. Right? All right. I'm gonna give this a shot. Okay, I'm gonna try it. Ooh, I'm trying it more regularly. Back and forth, slipping, Oh, I'm doing it. Oh, and then you've gone from like, I'm a smoker to I am not a smoker. And usually that's like at least 5 years. Like that's a long time, right? With that particular one. Um, but it can be done. And so I use that analogy because it's super relatable for people. We've all again had something that we like a habit we've tried to change for ourselves. Now, if you imagine with an organization, because an organization, right, is just a bunch of people doing the people thing everywhere, for better or worse. And you have the leader who's like, we're going to use this new CRM, or we're going to do this is the new plan, or this is the new meeting schedule, or everybody back in the office, like whatever it is. The leader has gone through all of the phases of no, 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 maybe how would that work? They've gone through it. And now they're bought in and they're ready. They're coming in hot. And the employees are like, wait, no, 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 maybe how would that work? What about me? What about my family? What about the house I was going to buy? You have to meet everybody where they're at. A small percentage is going to go, cool, that's amazing. Let's do it. Another percent is going to go, whatever, as long as I have my job, I don't care. Just tell me what to do. And then there's going to be some people who are like, hell no. I'll do the training, but I'm going to just keep doing it my own way or whatever it is. Like rumor mill, they always do this. Let's see if it sticks.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be that people in the middle that could be moved in your direction. And those are the people you really want to target, right? And you have to target them like any communication strategy, many different ways, many different times to move them through their little stages, right? That whole transformation you had to get them, hopefully the majority of them, to being like, I don't know if it's okay to say it, but I'll go with it. Like not just drinking the Kool-Aid, but like making it. Like wouldn't that be amazing? Right.
And I'm glad you touched on that because that's exactly where I was going. How you help leaders and organizations handle change from the employee perspective.
Yeah.
Because in my last day job, we went through a pretty significant shift. And, as a leadership team, we talked about that gap between, the leadership team already having been through the change curve and understanding and, coming to terms with the change. And all of a sudden you're thrusting that on the employees that don't know anything. So they are weeks or months, behind the leadership
Mhm.
team, in terms of accepting that change. So, getting the employees through that gap and leadership to understand that
Yeah.
there is that gap,
Yeah.
for me is a pretty significant message that people need to understand, because you've already been through that change. You've gone through,
Yeah.
in many stages, in many cases, the 5 stages of grief, because of the
Yeah.
change. And now,
Yeah.
it's on the employees. So, how do you help them, through this process, or do you get involved in things like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, prevention is always lovely.
Yeah,
Um, and I'll give you one for that, but I'll start with the biggest one, which is usually like some type of cleanup, right? Because we're just trained to think of it as transactional and process and strategic and like project management. And that's kind of the more traditional change management approach is anyways, to your point. So usually it's like, hey, we did this thing. We're having like people just aren't bought in or there's just like the vibe is different, whatever. So they're already feeling the pain and they're like, I don't know why people are burning out. I don't know. I don't understand. Um, we give them perks, right? And so for me to come in and say, well, I can already there's already pain points for me to hook onto. And so that's an easier case to make. Like, well, let me explain how people respond. It sounds like there's a lot of change fatigue. Let me explain how those things that you just said are traced back and why like the meditation app isn't working or the whatever you think you're offering is not working to like really solve it when it's a prevention thing and they're like, I heard you do change like what is this? uh a good question to ask, a good analogy, I think, is have you ever gone to like a workshop, right? So if we're doing the leaders, right, like have you ever gone to like a develop like a meeting or a workshop or a conference and you were in the same room all day and you took a break and you came back and someone was in the seat you were sitting in. Or the next day, say it's a multi-day affair, right? You come back in, you're like maybe a little tired because the next day was long or the first day was long. You come back in and somebody is in your seat.
how dare they?
How dare they sit in the seat that you said was yours that's not named yours, right? We all do that, right? Oh, that's dad's chair, that's mom's chair,
Yeah.
that's this, that's that. Like we all have this like little territorial thing. Just again, human nature. And so I'm like, okay, Matt, that's a chair. It's a chair. There's still a seat for you, right? Imagine now all of the little changes that you are asking the employees to make to do this one major shift,
Yeah.
right? A new office building. Okay, think about like imagine you're them and take yourself through their new morning routine to get to this new location or all the training they have to do for the new CRM or the new AI tool or the whatever to now just do the job that they already were overwhelmed by. And you think that that one training session is going to be enough, or your beautiful vision is going to be motivating enough. Change is hard, change is scary. So it's kind
And
of just putting it back in their experience.
and you mentioned change fatigue. I've
Mm.
been in so many situations where, oh, here goes another change. Here goes another attempt at the same change.
Yeah.
And the lack of buy-in, because, oh, they're just giving lip service, for
Hmm.
this change. So all of that messaging is so important, because staff is going to doubt, everything that you're saying. If they don't buy in, and you've got to really sell it to them, be consistent on your messaging, keep reinforcing the message, they're just not going to buy in.
Right.
And it's too easy to say, oh, they're just being difficult. No.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll often tell people to think through it when we're like, oh, it's a performance issue. It very well may be, but it very well may not be. And it's cheaper to keep them usually, right? So, do they know to do it? Do they know how to do it per your standards? Like, is that clear, right? Like what your expectations are. And now do they want to do it? Like that's where like there's two other questions to get to before like, oh, they're being difficult. They don't want to do it. They're not motivated. They might be motivated. They may just have no idea what you actually want or like what rabbit to chase or whatever. They thought it was an outcome task and it was a process task because you didn't clarify for them the process here matters. This is exactly how I want you to do it.
Right.
Versus I don't care how you get here, just do this. Just get there. So a lot of it is around like circling back to communication. It's just being very clear with yourself what you need and want and communicating that in a way that is understood by the other person. Because just because you said it didn't mean they understood it.
And talk to me a little bit about, sticking with the communications, but some of the personas that are involved, because there's the early adopter, there's the resistant one. So how do you recommend dealing with some of these personas to facilitate and keep the change moving along?
Yeah, I think if you can get to the heart of like the early adopters, like we're not worried about, right? We just want to kind of keep them bought in, right? That's a little bit easier than like trying to get somebody to like move them along. So I'm not saying ignore them, but like the majority of your effort is going to be spent with the people who are in some way, shape, or form resistant.
Yeah.
Right. So focusing on them for this, I really like to, if it's a small enough organization, I'll interview everyone. If it's not, like we'll do some type of climate survey, right? Confidential, of course. What I don't necessarily ask it this way, but the example, like the kind of jokey example I give is like, why does the new CRM scare you? Like what I had, there's another organizational psychologist who summed it up like all human behavior is driven by either fear of loss or quest for gain. And if you can just think about that, right? Like, okay, you're not doing the thing. So you're doing something different. Either, you're doing either inaction, right? Which is like resistance is a thing. Like you're actually acting resistant, right? It takes a lot of effort to stay still. And then, so in some way you're behaving, you're saying or acting, or thinking. So what is driving that? If I know what's driving it, I can kind of help you get to the other side. Or know that you were never going to get there. And like now it's okay, you are no longer a fit for the new organization. I am not making employment decisions, just to be clear, that's not my area. But if the client is the company and the company has hired me, I will kind of report back, hey, some of the folks are just not going to come along with you, and you need to make it okay for them to say that. I'm not going to say who, but you need to create a space where they feel comfortable going like, hey, this position no longer works for me. And I have had client firms where the prior leadership, like it was for whatever reason, like felt like nobody could ever say that. I think it's rare now, but you just want to make sure, again, like this is where we get into things like psychological safety.
Yeah.
But going back to the communication piece, how you get there is really asking those questions. What are employees thinking and hearing? What are they making up? What are the stories in their head? how do they respond to stress? Do they lean in? Do they lean out? Right? Do they run away from people or move towards people? Is it they are worried that they won't be able to do their job, the job in the new way? Do they feel like they lost status? Maybe they weren't a leader by title, but they had been there so long, they were the go-to.
Right.
And now they're not the go-to because everyone's on the same playing field or everyone's on the same level. So they feel like, well, who am I now? So there's like a status or an identity loss, right? Maybe they were, so there was a time, you mentioned your prior day job like mine. So before I went out on my own, one of the organizations I was working with, I really wanted to buy a house. I mean, I was kind of far off from being able to do that, but I wanted to start like actively like figuring out how to get there.
Right.
And one of the kind of professionals I was talking to, and kind of, real estate, and I was also talking with financial planners, and they were like, and all the repairs, you're gonna have to counter that in. And then I would have colleagues who were like, hey, I need to telework because the plumber has to come, and I'm like, based on my position status, I was not allowed to do any telework. So if I owned a home and the plumber had to come in a 2-hour window, I would have to take the entire day of PTO.
Yeah.
So now I hate you because you've made your telework policy has, in my mind, stripped me of my ability to own a home. Right? Which is somewhat irrational. Like, I mean? It's like a big, like, how did you get there?
It's a leap,
But when
yeah.
I say it that way, you're like, I could at least make like that. I could see how you got there at least. Like, I disagree. Maybe there's something we could do, but that's kind of what we all do, right? We jump. And so it's helping people understand, like, hey, this is what they're thinking. Hey, this is how you, like, this is what you're thinking. How true is that really? Like, what other things have you tried to do? Have you communicated this concern back? Right? But if you just recognize, like, everybody's kind of in their mind spinning and going like, worst case scenario, catastrophizing, you can at least have a little bit more grace and empathy to take the time to have a better conversation.
And how effective is it to use an early adopter as a change champion? They can become an advocate to help others, other peers along. How effective is that really?
It is a best practice, but I'll caveat it, like, it needs to be the right people.
Yeah.
Right? So the person who's always the early adopter, like, may not have enough credibility. Like, you always go along with this, like, So it's not necessarily like, are they, I mean, yes, they're an early adopter, like, and, right, they have credibility. It's the right messenger for the person, right? So there's also research saying that, like, for these types of messages, it should come from here. Like, this should come from the direct supervisor. This should come from the leader. This should come from HR. And so it's not just, get the people who love it, like, have them tell everybody to love it, right? It's, the supervisor, the direct supervisor saying to the employees, hey, I'll tell you what I know and I'll tell you what I don't know. What I know is this. What I'm not sure of is this. I have full faith that we can get there. I will be as transparent with you as I can. Please bring me any concerns or questions you have so I can take them up the chain, and I will do my best to get those answers to you. You can't guarantee, because you can't tell, nobody can guarantee that people are going to respond to them, right? So I don't want the manager to go, I promise I'll get you the answers. You can't promise that. It relies on people telling you something. But you can say, I promise I will take them up the chain and get back to you as soon as I can, or do my best to get you the answers that you need, right? But if you're just authentic, you can say, like, hey, I don't know. I'm not fully bought in because I don't know the whole thing. But I have faith in the intention. And here's the decision-making process. The biggest things I hear is employees feeling like the decision-making wasn't transparent. They don't
Yeah.
even care what the decision was. They just don't know that, they don't trust that you made it well. It was behind the room, behind the closed doors.
Yeah, and I think there's a misunderstanding, or I'm not sure what to call it, about decision making,
Mhm.
because it's not a matter of, the employee needs to have a voice, right? But the
Yeah.
employer doesn't get to make a decision per se.
Yes.
And they need to understand that their concerns, that their opinions, may inform the decision. But at the end
Mhm.
of the day, I, as a leader, need to make a decision that is my choice, that is my responsibility, that the company has to go along with, and I'm going to hear you out. So both parties need to understand, the importance of an informed decision. And I think
100%.
communicating that is important, because that's a gap.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Frances Fry posted on LinkedIn like maybe a month ago, and I steal it and I give her credit. Um, like it shaped how I communicate this, which is, I initially was saying strategic transparency, but I actually don't like that because I feel like that could be the strategic part could feel a little manipulated. Like that word,
Yeah,
like to some might feel like, oh, a manipulated transparency.
right.
So I think it's for me, I prefer to call it responsible transparency. Her metaphor was a restaurant with an open kitchen. I have worked in such a restaurant and eaten in one. And when you eat in one, right? I don't know who if you have, but when you've eaten in one, right, you see like, oh, those beautiful cuts of this and that, and it's glorious, and like the chefs and everybody looks busy but maybe happy, or at least like not angry. I don't know. That could be fun too. Those like chefs are crazy, right? So like stereotype. Um, but you see enough to make you want to eat the food and have a fun environment and trust that it's safe and clean, and you don't see the trash
Right.
and the dishes in the dishwasher and the like cuts, like the scraps of the carrots on the ground, and like you don't see all that by design. It's responsible transparency. And so, I think that is I think that that's a very good metaphor. It's landed really well with the clients, that I've spoken to about it, of like, like a lot of employees don't want to be making the decisions.
Right.
Like heavy is the head, that wears the crown. Like they don't want that. Some might, but you can groom them for that. They know that they're not the CEO and making those decisions, or the COO or whomever, the founder. But they want to know, again, that you see and hear them.
Yeah.
Right? That you're not just going to like pull the rug out for them on a Tuesday morning. That you were at, that when they said, hey, we need a CRM, a new CRM. I don't know why that is my example of the day, but here we are. Right? That if they say we need a better CRM, you go, cool, what features? Why are you saying that? You ask them, as opposed to just going, okay, cool. Hey, here's a new CRM. I mean, thank you. Doesn't do what we needed, but okay.
Oh, it's the engagement at that point, right?
Mhm.
People
Yeah.
people are a part of that machine. So,
Yeah.
how do they get to provide their opinion, their input? And again, you may choose to ignore it all at the end of the day, but people want to be heard. And this is a weird example, but it's what came to mind. We have a restaurant in Miami that is all mirrors, and
Mm.
years ago they took away the mirrors, and people
Oh.
stopped going
Huh.
because people went to be able to see themselves in the restaurant, and for other
Interesting.
people to see them through the mirrors. So they put the mirrors back up, and the mirrors have been there forevermore. People want to hear their names, people want to see themselves, people want to be heard. And
Mm-hmm.
change management, that is that much more critical
Yeah.
than in a lot of other areas, because they want to be considered.
Absolutely. I think one other piece to this that's important is, I mean, and we could do an entire episode on that, so I'll just kind of hit it at the high level, is psychological safety, right? Which, you know, the term, because the name of the term has gotten, it's a little misunderstood. It does not mean you get all your needs met. It does not mean there's no accountability, right? It's not like this soft, cushy thing where it's all rainbows and butterflies. What it is that you feel comfortable asking to be seen and heard, essentially, right? Going, hey, I have an idea. Hey, I noticed an error. Hey, I made a mistake. Hey, we just did as a team, we messed up, or I see a compliance risk. And knowing that you're going to be not punished for that. Or that your idea is going to be heard, evaluated fairly. But I think that, you know, I wanted to make sure I said that, because yes, making people feel seen and heard is important, but if you feel like, well, they're not asking for that, it's probably a culture problem.
Yeah.
And that's another big thing that I hear too, is like, managers are like, well, they don't want that. They never asked for it. And employees are like, I didn't know I could. Right. Or like, you know, so that's the other piece, is that if you want them, you should know that they want to feel seen and heard. And if they are not using their voice in some way, it may be because they don't feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You have to make them, you have to set the environment for people to open. So, Dr. Rachel, you know, there's a lot of different types of changes in the organization. What other, or at what points should organizations be bringing in a change facilitator, let's call it, such as yourself, to be ready for change? Because it shouldn't always be at the time of, we need to make a change. Oh my God, we need you. So when is the right time for you to be called in?
Yesterday. Last week. And I say that because, I mean, so for us, right, and other change management firms that are more the traditional, like, strategic planning, there's a few are starting to realize, like, oh, we should have, like, people should be a bigger module in our process, you know. But people are very, very much the heart of what we do. And so we work on two types of change, if you will, right? The change transition, like a big transition, right? Or quote, change event, although an event implies that there's a stop and start time. So the merger, the acquisition, reduction in force, restructuring, new leader, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The other one, and this is why, you know, I said yesterday, was like, constant change is change. And what organization now is not dealing with, like, every second requires a different pivot, right? Where, due to the nature of the industry, legal, are you just like this, that, you know, I've had folks describe it as like every day is whack-a-mole and you're running out of like mallets and playing with your feet, right? Like, you're just like, you can't keep up. So that is also, I like the phrase change facilitator, because I think it helps it feel more approachable.
Yeah.
Than like, oh, we have this kind of constant buzzing like culture. It may feel like you may be used to the transition, like the traditional change management firms, and you don't feel like you need all of that. You just need someone to help your people become more adaptable to change, so that stress is a strategic advantage as opposed to like a burnout pathway. So that's for us. That's where we come in, and I would like to see more folks looking at that. So instead of waiting for the big things, the big shiny objects, we just look at better cultures.
No, definitely. And I just had another thing flash through my head. Maybe you could be a change doula.
Oh,
The doulas have become a very popular function in a couple of different places in life. So
yeah.
me and my weird thoughts.
Someone also said like work therapy, and I was like, ooh, regulated term. Like, no, don't do that. Like, I'm not a therapist. Like, I know what you mean, but I would be remiss if I didn't immediately put the flash on that.
I didn't realize therapist was a regulated term. Good to know.
Well, I mean, so yes, like, so like I am not licensed. So some states regulate the word psychologist. So saying psychology professional is, so yeah, terms are fluid until they are very not.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, so um, then that becomes fun, and that's why we have lawyers.
Okay, there you go. So, Dr. Rachel, as you know, no one comes on the show without providing a good, actionable tips to our listeners. So, what can
Yeah.
you tell our listeners that they can implement today to improve change in their organizations?
Um, the there's so many, but I want to give one that's like free and simple, and take a micro break. Like, just take a break. Like, take 20 seconds in the middle of your day to just not do work. Like, take a breath, right? It's may sound cliche, but it's really not. Like, if you can just take a breath, take a pause, you will feel better. You'll be more in control of your decisions, and people will receive you better. So just sprinkle a few of those throughout your workday, and that'll kind of make whatever you're dealing with go down a little more smoothly.
Absolutely. Any other suggestions?
Call me. No, I'm just kidding.
I recommend that one highly. But yeah,
No, just anything you can do to get a better sense of who you are, but more importantly, how you're being received, right? Our What we think of ourselves, how we would label our identity, is not necessarily, again, the reputation we have when we walk out of the room. So anything you can do to get, and I will stress, validated measures, science backed tools, please. Um, any self awareness you can get about who you are and how people are receiving you will be an absolute game changer for anyone in an organization, whether you're at the leadership level or not.
and tying that back to one of your earlier comments about the Hogan assessment, a lot of these assessments aren't available to smaller organizations because they do need
Yeah.
professionals such as yourself.
Yeah.
I'm huge on assessments. Are there any assessments that you could recommend? For instance, I know there's a free disc assessment out there, or a couple. Would you recommend those? I mean, you kind of do need someone to help walk you through the results, but are
Yeah.
there any of those that would be helpful to small and mid-sized business owners who don't have a resource such as yourself, or maybe a strong HR professional that they could benefit from?
Yeah, well, I am biased because, the Hogan is the most scientifically validated, and it is the one that shows your reputation versus like what you think your identity is. So I would say, at least start there. Like, you can reach out to me to see like what the pricing might be. Like, I have tried to make it extremely, I work with small and mid-size only. So there are those of us that are not like the multinational firms that have the huge pricing. I think Hogan does do a pretty good job of making it accessible via folks like myself. So, you know, check the assumption, because I think you're right. I think a lot of small businesses feel like, oh, that it's the gold standard with Fortune 500, which means I can't afford it. Like, you might be able to, so reach out. Um, DISC is common, is used a lot. I have a lot of recognition. If you can get a decent free one, it's a start. But I really pride on using kind of the more validated science-backed tools, and that one hasn't. It's just not quite as robust.
Yeah.
Similar, even more so with like the Myers-Briggs and a few others. But at the end of the day, what are you trying to get? Are you just trying to better understand yourself? They may be a start, at least.
Okay. And where can our listeners find you?
Pretty easy. My name.com. So RachelBoehm.com, BOEHM.com. And everything else will jump from there.
Awesome. So thank you to Dr. Rachel for sharing such powerful insights on what it really takes to lead change, not just plan it. I think today's conversation made it clear that change isn't just about strategy, it's about people. And where leaders address the human side with intention, they can turn potential chaos into competitive advantage. If you found this episode valuable, be sure to subscribe to From Stuck to Scaled so you never miss a conversation that helps you and your business grow. And if you know another leader who's navigating change, share this episode with them. It could help make all the difference. I'm Julio Gonzalez, and until next time, keep leading with clarity, courage, and purpose. Take care, everyone.
You've been listening to From Stuck to Scaled, Growth Strategies for Small and Mid-Sized Businesses, produced by Optocution LLC. For more information, tools, and resources, check out our website www.redefinepossible.co/podcast.